And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the rookie, Mr. Jim Morris.
How's everybody doing?
Great.
Great meetings? Great awards? You guys aren't very fired up. What's up with that? You're in Texas. You know, people come to me all the time and are like, well, how'd they pick Dennis Quaid to play you in a movie? Why didn't you play yourself? Well, I went to the Disney executives when we decided to make a movie, and I said, why can't I play me? And they said, Jim, let's be honest. You're too good looking to play that part. We need to bring somebody down to earth like Dennis and make it work. And I said, okay. Having a movie made about your life is something incredible because what I did is what you guys do. People helping people. I'd given up on my dream. 11 years I'd quit. No thoughts of going back. Doctors telling me it's impossible. You can't pitch. It's physically impossible. You cannot do it. A group of high school kids who I tried to push as hard as I could pushed me back. And at the age of 35, I find myself back in the middle of my childhood dream. How does that happen? Well, perseverance, second chances, a sense of humor, never giving up. It's all of that. It's what we do every day. You know, when I played minor league baseball, we had to buy a car so all of us could squeeze into it and drive back and forth from our apartment to the field every day. We got 8 tickets that year because our car was so loud and obnoxious. It was the biggest piece of junk you've ever seen. They called it the banana boat. But our apartment was styling. You know why? Because we had an apartment full of rented furniture. Stereos, TVs. And if we could ever coax anybody coming back to our apartment and they actually survived the ride in the banana boat, they loved our apartment. It was fantastic. But having a movie made about your life is something that is overwhelming. Having 250 people on a movie set look at you every time they film something and like, are you okay with this? And I'm like, I'm not from Hollywood, I have no idea. You guys are making a movie, you make it. Dennis helped me live with that. He brought me back down to earth. He said, look, this is about you, enjoy it. Have a good time with it. And if you're unhappy with anything, tell us about it. And they made sure that the movie stayed as close to home as possible. People want to know all the time, what's real and what's not. How many people have seen the movie? A couple? That's good. One thing that is not real is the radar gun on the side of the road. That kills people. That was such a good part. Dennis did so good at that. Well, the radar gun was on the side of that road, and I drove by it every day for 2 years. And I taught physics and chemistry, but I was not bright enough to realize that if you actually threw something at that radar sign, it would light up. Our screenwriter found that out, and he said, stop your truck. He got out, he threw a ball, it lit up, and I went, that's fantastic. But he left it in the movie to let everybody know I had no idea how hard I threw. At the age of 25, the doctor said, you'll never pitch again. I've taken 85% of the muscle out of your shoulder. You can't do it. It's weird how we come back to our dreams. You guys are chasing dreams now, and you're helping people while you're doing it. I love the Kids Across America thing. That is fantastic. That's why I'm here. I'm here because of a group of kids. I'm here because I try to teach kids all over the country, people all the time. Jimmy, why don't you teach in the classroom anymore? And I have other people go, Jimmy, you teach in such a large classroom now, you get to talk to everybody. And that's what I love. It didn't start that way, though. I started as a military brat moving all over the country, north, south, east, and west, born in San Diego, then Presidio, then San Francisco, Illinois, Connecticut, Key West, Florida 3 or 4 times, and finally we moved to Texas. Unbelievable. I grew up in an age when it's better for children to be seen and not heard. Those that have watched the movie, you saw the relationship that my father and I had. That's the G-rated version. It's worse than that. But we moved everywhere. Children to be seen and not heard. I heard that every day of my life as I grew up, and so I didn't talk as a kid. And as soon as I leave here, I've got to get on a plane, I got to go to California and talk. And in between that, I'm going to call my dad and go, guess what I did today? I got to talk. You can't shut me up now. But it's amazing, everywhere we moved, I took a ball and a glove. It was my childhood dream. I'm going to be a baseball player. It was my survival. I'd take my glove and ball and go find a group of kids wherever we moved, and I'd show them I could throw the ball and I could hit it, and I had a team full of friends and I never had to say a word. It carried me through childhood. It was my dream. It was my passion. I didn't care if I got paid or not. I wanted to play the game of baseball. And so at the age of 15, we were in Hollywood, Florida. I was ecstatic. Second freshman ever to make the varsity baseball team in Hollywood, Florida. University of Miami was already looking at me, and I was ready to go, man. I had my future set. 2 weeks after the season starts, my dad said, guess what? We're moving to Brownwood, Texas. How many people in here know where Brownwood, Texas is? Those that are sitting in the back. You have to be trying to get lost to get to Brownwood, Texas. You go to Brownwood to eat at Underwood's Barbecue. All right? He said, we're going to move there. You're going to play football for the same coach that I played for when I was in high school. And I was 15, and I'd grown up with my dad, and so I'd learned to be sarcastic. And I said, are you sure he's still alive? He said some derogatory things, and he said, yes, he is. And you're going to play football for him because that's what everybody does that moves there. But he didn't tell me a few things. Yes, he did play for that coach, Gordon Wood, legendary coach in high school football. For 2 weeks he played for him. And then it got too hard and he quit. Another thing he didn't tell me, Brownwood sits in a hole in the middle of the state of Texas and gets to about 9,000 degrees in the summer. He left that out. He also didn't tell me that the football coach hated baseball. We're not going to have baseball. Baseball takes away from football. See, high school football in Texas is pretty big. It runs from August 1st through July 30th. It's a long season. If you can get any baseball games in, you're welcome to them. The biggest thing I think I can convey to people, though, is that when we moved to Brownwood, Brownwood High School was the 30th school I'd been to in 10 years. 30 schools. I have no lifelong friends. We moved every 6 months. And so baseball was the only thing I knew from childhood through growing up. We moved back to Brownwood. We lived with my grandparents for a while, and the one person that I cherished and loved more than anybody in my life was my grandfather, Ernest Morris. I tell people all the time, you need a mentor in your life. You need someone you can look up to, someone you can be like, someone you can fashion yourself after, someone you can appreciate and respect. My grandfather, Ernest Morris, was that person. He had a menswear store in Brownwood, Texas, middle of nowhere. Started it from the floor up. 6'3", 225-pound man. He had people like Gene Autry come in from California and buy suits from him in Brownwood, Texas. He knew everybody. Most integrity of anybody I'd ever seen in my life. Most honest person of anybody. He was an incredible person. I looked up to him and I wanted to be like him. But as I lived with him through my high school years, he had this saying anytime I walked out of his house. He was very respected. He was either at church or at work his entire life. When I walked out of his front door every day, whether it was to cut the yard, get the newspaper, go to school, go to football practice, wherever it was, he would say, remember who you are. Remember who you are. 15, 16, 17, I thought remember who you are meant remember that you're my grandson, and if you embarrass me in any way, I will kill you. Took me until my 30s, and I had kids of my own, and I taught kids to realize remember who you are is actually quite simple. Don't do anything you wouldn't have anybody see you do at any time. You have so many people looking up to you and looking at you. Remember who you are. Kids are always looking at us. We don't always realize it. They hear every single thing we say. Remember who you are. I worked for my grandfather in the stores during the summertime. I learned some incredible things about him. Things he didn't want other people to know. Like during Thanksgiving, he would take dinners to people who couldn't afford anything. During Christmas, he'd buy Christmas gifts for families and pay bills for them because they didn't have anything to give their kids. And he did it anonymously. No one ever knew where it came from. It just happened. He was Santa Claus. But he didn't want the credit for it. He just didn't want those kids to go without. Remember who you are. People helping people. That's why we're all here. That's why we're all in this room. Well, as I went through high school, I learned a lot, and I loved my grandfather a lot. And I watched the way he worked with people day in and day out. And I knew that someday I wanted to be like that. But as a teenager, I wasn't quite ready.